At Subway, start your day the flavorful way by adding new guacamole to your favorite breakfast sandwich. Perfectly made with a hint of jalapeno, our guacamole turns up the flavor to your breakfast. Try it today on a hot and toasty egg, white, and cheese. Subway, eat fresh.
The BS Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects. The BS Report. The BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Welcome to the BS Report. It's Tuesday. We're going to talk basketball. Our dude Zach Lowe has already written somehow twice today. I'm actually worried that I'm the Tom Thibodeau to his Luol Deng. Luol Deng. Luol? Is it Luol Deng? I'm going to get this right at some point in my life. Luol Deng. Luol Deng. I am the Tom Thibodeau to his Luol Deng because he's written twice today, and now he's on the podcast, and then we're going to get him an intravenous fluid to replenish his energy. Zach Lowe, how are you?
So what is Barnwell then? Is there someone who's worse off than Luol Deng? I don't know how to characterize him.
That's a great point. He's like a cross between Joakim Noah and Jimmy Butler, from a minute standpoint. He's somehow playing 49 minutes a game. Big trade last night. Now, Bynum goes to the Bulls, who they waive him. They go under the tax, which is huge because not only do they save like $20 million this year, they then do not have to worry about paying the repeater tax. For Cleveland, they get Deng. They gave up a first-round pick they got from Sacramento, as you wrote about today. Pretty heavily protected, but still a first-round pick. The weird part of this trade is Cleveland is going nowhere. It's a team that has been super disappointing, that does not pass the eye test when you're watching it, that certainly does not seem like a playoff team. Why does Luol Deng make this better?
Well, it's actually interesting. Everyone saw the trade and thought, well, the Cavs will make the playoffs. What good is being a number 6 seed? And I actually don't think a playoff spot is guaranteed for them. Let's assume Chicago sinks out of the race, Boston sinks out of the race, Philly sinks out of the race. That still leaves 10 teams, sort of slap fighting for 8 spots, because the New York teams, look, they've actually looked like real basketball teams lately. Detroit's going to hang in. I think Charlotte will hang in. Toronto, Washington, Atlanta will definitely hang in. I don't think it's a guarantee that they make the playoffs. That said, Cavaliers small forward is maybe the worst position in the entire league among teams that are actually trying. Between Alonzo G and Earl Clark, they've just got nothing. And Deng is a really, really good player. Probably not as good an offensive player as the Cavs are hoping or thinking that he is, and that's really where they need the most help. I mean, he's shooting 27% from 3, shot 32% last year, so it's not like you're getting a big-time floor spacer, but the upgrade he brings over the guys they have is huge and should be enough to get them into the playoffs, but it's not like they'd make this trade and suddenly they're a no-brainer playoff team, and I think they know that.
Yeah. All right, I have a few thoughts off of those thoughts. We'll go one at a time, though, so we can hit each one. First of all, yeah, as you said, it's a 10-team race. Indiana and Miami are in, no question. Toronto, can we agree that they have now thrown their hat in the ring and they're going for a playoff spot here?
Yeah, I think that the idea of tanking is over there. Unless, tonight they're playing the Pacers, unless they go on an 8-game losing streak or something like that. I think they're committed to letting this ride for now.
And they should. We learned this year for 2 straight years that for whatever reason, if you get rid of Rudy Gay, your team immediately improves. And it is a bizarre thing. I guess there are some statistical reasons for it, but it is still strange to me that you could replace Rudy Gay with Terrence Ross and immediately become much better as a basketball team. That's weird.
It's not weird. It's not weird to me. I mean, he was shooting 38% and using 30% of their possessions. So using like an Allen Iverson level of their possessions. I mean, it's hard to be helpful when you're doing that. And it's not just Ross, who, by the way, can't miss from the corners right now. It's like redistributing those possessions to Lowry and Valanciunas and Amir Johnson and getting actual bench players instead of Dwight Bikes and DJ Augustine. I'm not surprised they're better at all. But yeah, trading and Rudy is shooting better in Sacramento. I guess TBA. We'll see how he does in Sacramento.
Yeah, I shouldn't say I'm surprised. I'm just saying it's a weird thing that for 2 straight years, removing Rudy Gay from a basketball team immediately made that team improve. I get all the reasons. It's still strange to me because when you they played Miami, Sacramento played Miami, I guess a week ago. And he kind of went toe to toe with LeBron a little bit and could defend him. Like, it's not like he's a bad basketball player. It's just that he plays incorrectly. You know what I mean? Like, you almost want to just sit him down and say, hey, Rudy, it kills your team when you dribble for 10 seconds and then take a 20-footer. Like, it murders everything. And he doesn't grasp that for whatever reason. And I probably never will. But it's weird to me that one player could play incorrectly and have that big of an impact on everybody else. Because it's not like, it doesn't seem like he's a bad guy, right? Like, from a chemistry standpoint, it's not like he's DeMarcus Cousins, like just a temper tantrum waiting to happen at all times.
I like that you just named another king, by the way, in saying who he's not like. But right. It is weird that teams keep getting better. But, I mean, it's not weird to me, but I agree with you. He's actually a pretty good defensive player, one-on-one, pretty good in team schemes. He's long, he's tough. He just needs to be a different player on offense, and he hasn't ever, since that shoulder injury. What he needs to be is a guy who spots up more and dribbles less. And since his shoulder injury, he just hasn't been able to shoot well enough to play that role. And so he's the same guy, that he's been, dribbling too much, taking tough shots. He's not a very good passer. But, yeah, he has the raw material to transform himself into a different player.
He's certainly a frustrating player. And I watch him. I guess I shouldn't say it's that weird, because when I watch him, I always think about how unfun it would be to play basketball with him. It's kind of like all the things that I don't like about playing basketball with somebody captured with one guy, just doing things over and over again that he shouldn't do and doesn't make anyone better. Like, you just kind of stand there and watch him. It's all. Anyway, we both think Toronto is in there. So that's 3. Washington is going to be in there unless they just keep getting bad luck with injuries. But I think they have every incentive to give a crap. They have a pretty good team. When they have those 5 guys out there in crunch time and they're all healthy, they actually look pretty decent. Then it gets a little dicey, because you have Atlanta right now. That's the 3rd best team by record, 18-17. So they have a 6.5 game lead over Cleveland, but they just lost Horford for the year. And man, when you watch them, it just seems improbable that if you just have Jeff Teague, Paul Millsap, and Kyle Korver, that's enough to go 500. It seems inconceivable on paper, and yet every game they're hanging in these games. How good is that coach?
I still think they're pretty good. I think they're going to hang in the playoff race. They have a head start. They're 4 games up in the loss column on Cleveland, who we're talking about now. I think they have a weird roster, but they have a lot of good they have a lot of well-rounded big guys. I mean, Millsap is obviously by far the best now. They miss Horford a lot. They're going to miss him on defense a lot, but I think they'll hang in.
Okay. Well, they're one of those teams that hasn't done that killer West Coast swing yet, which is what the Celtics are experiencing right now. The Celtics are going to be 13-25 in 96 hours.
You're happy. This is what you've been waiting for.
No, I've changed my mind 7 times, but now it's inevitable, and I'm just going to enjoy it. They're not good enough. Like, as soon as Jordan Crawford turned back into Jordan Crawford, they can't beat anyone in the league. Every game they play, they don't have the best guy in the game, which is a problem as the year goes along. And now they were overachieving, and now I think that there's a general spirit that seems to be down. I don't think they're a playoff team. I think they fall out. You agree with that, right?
Yeah. I think they're definitely going to fall out.
Okay.
It'll be interesting to see how much Bayless plays and whether they have another trade in them. I think they will sniff around hard for a Brandon Bass trade and maybe a couple of other things. We'll see if they have another move in them, though.
Well, so there's 3 spots left, because we just said Indiana, Miami, Atlanta, Toronto, and Washington. I'm not positive I agree with you on Atlanta, but I do think they can get to 36 wins, which will be enough. I think the Bulls fall out unless Thibodeau goes into all-time revenge mode and just does everything possible just to screw over the front office to try to make the playoffs. Oh, you want a lottery pick? Not on my watch. And just somehow coaches 27 hours a day, even though that's impossible. That's their only chance. But if they're smart, they'll do stuff like, oh, Noah's still having problems with his foot. We're just going to shut him down for the rest of the year. That's
well, and that's the thing. Noah, there's just an inevitable, 10-game stretch that Noah will be hurt. So that's still coming. He's been banged up for pieces of this year already. So a Noah injury is like an inevitability every season. And
Cleveland's only 5 losses. They're 3 wins behind Chicago, so they probably pass them. Charlotte has a phenomenal coach. Somehow they are like, what are they, in the top 6 defensively from defensive
exactly
efficiency?
6.
Yeah. Which, if you watch their team and then you factor in the part that Kid Gilchrist has been out for a month, that is incredible. Is that the most incredible stat of the season? Charlotte is 6th with Al Jefferson in defensive efficiency.
Well, he missed a lot of games, but they've been actually pretty good, almost just as good since he came back. And it's weird because I keep watching their games and looking at the scores. I mean, they gave up 1,000 points to Portland. They had another really bad loss on their West Coast trip. I'm blanking out on who it was to. And they just hang in there. They're still 6. I'm like, when are they going to start dropping to 12th, 13th? But they're still hanging in there at 6. They're pretty good. I think they're in danger of missing the playoffs. But I mean, that goes for all these teams we're going to talk about now. If they play defense like that, they're going to hang in all year.
Yeah, I think they're better coached than Cleveland. That's for sure. So that Charlotte, Detroit, I think. The teams, Charlotte doesn't have enough talent, but they're well coached. Detroit has a weird assembly of talent, and I don't know what to make of it, and I don't think they do either. And Mo Cheeks has been all over the place, unfortunately. I don't think he has any clue what rotations to use yet, and unfortunately it's mid-January, and that's a problem. So I don't know whether they make it or not. Philly seems like they want to be out. The 3 teams that aren't in the playoffs right now that want to get in there, the 2 New York teams, who do not have their first-round picks, so there's absolutely no reason for them to tank. And then Cleveland. Cleveland is 11-23. They are 2-15 on the road. And more importantly, just watching them, a top 3 worst chemistry team. And we know there's been a fuss made about whatever happened behind the scenes, and Deion Waiters got mad at Tristan Thompson or whatever that'll happen. But when you watch them, the fundamental flaw of that team is that Kyrie Irving and Deion Waiters do not enjoy playing basketball together. And I don't know how Luol Deng solves that. But how does Deng solve that? Kyrie Irving and Deion Waiters do not like playing basketball with each other. How do you solve that?
I don't know if that's true. I mean, I don't know how you see that, or certainly there have been burblings of that. You solve it by bringing Waiters off the bench, so you stagger their minutes a little bit. And Deng is just sort of one of those Swiss Army knife guys. He'll get everyone involved. He's a locker room guy. He'll inform them what the right way to play is and how to win in the NBA. He'll play defense. He's the sort of role model guy that you bring in to preach these are the little things that you do if you want to win. But no, I agree with you. This is a very imperfect roster with a lot of problems and a lot of holes, and he doesn't come in and make it a 45-win team. And nobody thinks that, but he doesn't come in and make it a surefire playoff team. There are a lot of other questions they got to answer.
First of all, how dare you question my body language credentials? I have a PhD in body language, and I know what I say.
Deion Waiters does get an F in body language. There's a lot of pouting, a lot of standing.
It's not great.
He does not look happy on the basketball court. That I will concede.
Here's, as you know, I have a PhD in body language. I'm the body language doctor. Here's one thing I noticed about Kyrie and Waiters. In the Celtic game, if you remember, they're down 1 or 2 in the last – hey, my phone went off. They're down 1 or 2 in the last 15 seconds, right? They get, I think, a missed free throw. Somehow Waiters gets the ball and goes over midcourt. Kyrie runs over. He's on the right side. Kyrie kind of runs over expecting to get the ball because he's the best player on the team and one of the best 6 or 7 guys going one-on-one at the end of a game that you want. Deion Waiters doesn't even consider looking at Kyrie and decides he's going to take it himself, goes to the basket, and I think he gets blocked by Brandon Bass. Celtics get the ball, game over, followed by just a split second of a Kyrie Irving WTF body language. And I think everyone in the Cavs in general going, wow, really? Deion, you're going to take that one by yourself? Not giving it to Kyrie Irving? That's the kind of stuff that's been happening with them this season. And whether Dan can fix a little of that or not, you're going from the poison is Bynum body language. He's miserable. He's a miserable guy anyway, but especially miserable on this team because he's a low post guy who nobody in the team can throw an entry pass to him. And now you replace him with Deng. And as you said, their small forwards were Alonzo G, Earl Clark, a little CJ Miles, and Anthony Bennett playing out of position. So he's clearly an upgrade on that. Then crunch time, you think Irving, Waiters, Deng, Varejao, Tristan Thompson. Looks good on paper. I don't know if those 5 guys will play well together, but on paper it looks okay. So if you're 11-23, you have to get to 37 wins to make the playoffs. They would have to go 26 and 22. Yeah. So they have to go 4 games over 500 the rest of the way. You see it?
You should be able to manage that if you're a mediocre team in the Eastern Conference playing an Eastern Conference heavy schedule. It should be manageable. One thing I do, you know who else has bad body language in the exact way that you described, which is maybe a counter to your Waiters Irving problem argument? Kevin Durant has that same exact body language, and oftentimes when Russell Westbrook takes a crazy Russell Westbrook shot, you'll see KD on the wing with his hands in the air, like, what the hell are you doing? And he'll pound the sides of his body and pout and go back on defense. So it's not atypical, but yeah, watch for the KD. KD's an underrated touter.
I mean, I didn't want to bring it up. I'm glad you brought it up. You're right. Here's the thing with that. I think those guys are so close and those guys get along so well that when he does stuff like that, it's not done in a way to be like to show up somebody or to kind of show to everybody that you didn't agree with what happened. I just think they all love each other, and when somebody does something wrong, they just immediately react and they're not even thinking about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and Durant also is he's really excited to get the ball and do stuff with it because he knows he can be successful. He's disappointed he didn't get a chance to he's hyped up about doing something with the ball. And also, Russell Westbrook is awesome. Deion Waiters is not awesome. Russell Westbrook's one of the 10 best players in the league. So, he has more leeway to test his abilities a little bit, let's say.
Yeah, I'm okay with bad body language if I feel like the team really likes each other and is pulling for each other.
And there are not rumors about fistfights in the locker room.
Yeah. And there's not I really think that Deion Waiters believes he's the best player in the Cavaliers. And that I think he hangs out with his friends and they say to him, Kyrie's freezing you out, man. Or Kyrie took that shot. That shit, you should have taken that shot. I feel like all the stereotypes we would have about an NBA team in disarray actually applies to the Cavaliers. And then you have Jared Jack who comes in and he's been terrible this year. So then you have him too, and he's allegedly the veteran influence, and it just gets worse and worse.
Yeah, we'll see. By the way, as we're talking about the Eastern Conference, the Nets just released a statement that Darren Williams is in a walking boot and had a cortisone shot and PRP injections in both his ankles. So that's going really well.
Oh, wow. And
he may not miss a lot of time. They're saying he may only miss a couple of games, it looks like, according to what they've released. Or he's day-to-day. I don't know what the actual... He's definitely out Wednesday for Golden State. Will be reevaluated at the end of the week. So,
that's not great.
Just another day in Brooklyn.
And he's somebody that really looks like he's on the flip side of his career. And it reminds me of watching Baron Davis in 09, where 08, 09, that range, kind of past his Golden State peak, past that one good Clipper season he had when just physically he doesn't look right. And he's a half step slower and he's not going to the rim anymore. Darren Williams, 3.0 free throws a game this year, which just tells me he just wants to shoot. Just 20-footers and threes, which for that team isn't going to help them because he's the only guy that wants to get to the basket. Maybe that team doesn't make the playoffs. God, what a disaster that would be.
I mean, it wouldn't shock me. They haven't played very well all season. Their best player is hurt. Their franchise, Kevin Garnett, has been a disaster. Karolinko is just finally playing. Their franchise point guard is in a walking boot. I like D. Will. I've always been a D. Will fan, but All-Star D. Will in the past 3 seasons has really only emerged, or in the past 4 seasons, really, or 3.5 if you want to count this as a half, has really only emerged for 2 months. And for the rest of the time, it's been pretty good D. Will. And pretty good D. Will is not worth $100 million plus contract, and he's not good enough to make any noise with this particular roster. They need All-Star D. Will, especially with Lopez out.
And also not a leader in any way, shape, or form. And when you're paying somebody that much money, I feel the same way Kyrie Irving, who's still on a rookie contract, I do think when your best player is the point guard, but he's not a leader, that's a problem. And I don't see any leadership whatsoever from Kyrie Irving so far, especially like, you watch, I think we've talked about this before, but you watch John Wall with Washington and his personality, the team has kind of taken on his personality to a large degree. And I feel like that's, when I think about a point guard, I think of that. And I think about Chris Paul and the Clippers and how just everything runs through his personality. And I'm not saying that every point guard has to be wired that way, because Derrick Rose is certainly somebody who's not wired like that. But when you have the point guard who's a little pouty but he's also the highest paid guy in the team, and you're never sure if he's happy or not, like that, that's a killer. And I'll tell you another thing: the Celtics get the worst pick between Brooklyn and Atlanta, and there's a scenario here where both of those teams are in the lottery, right?
I think it's a long shot scenario, but it exists.
You need Cleveland and the Knicks to jump in, and you need Chicago and Atlanta to fall out, would be the scenario. You think that's a long shot? You would say long shot for that.
I think, yeah. I mean, I think if you're picking two Eastern Conference teams to miss the playoffs, and one of them is currently third in this poop pile of the conference, I think it's a long shot, but it's possible. I mean, look, Atlanta can go a lot of different ways. As we've talked about before, they have a roster that's really built to trade. They got a lot of assets. They can do a lot of different things. They can go in any direction they want. And they just lost, the guy who's sort of by far their best player. So, it's not out of the realm.
Here's the team I'm keeping an eye on. The Phoenix Suns. Because you said Cleveland had the worst small forwards in the league. Phoenix is, they have a bunch of dudes. I'm going to look it up as we're talking. But Phoenix is 20-12. I saw them in person last week, and they just knocked my socks off how well coached they were. Have you seen them in person yet?
I don't think I've seen Phoenix in person yet. I don't think they've come through here.
You would love it. You'd need to have a smoke. You'd have to put on a smoking jacket and have a cigar afterwards. You'd be so excited about Hornets.
Well, they're delightful on television, and boy, yeah. That's the biggest mistake we've made in my short time at Grantland, is ranking them toward the bottom of our league pass watchability rankings. I threw the caveat in there that Bledsoe was going to be super fun to watch, but I didn't expect anything like this.
And meanwhile, we were celebrating when they traded Gortat when that was a vindication. Like, yep, see, told you, Suns don't care about this season. And meanwhile, they trade their starting center, and it somehow makes them better. So they have P.J. Tucker playing 30.4 minutes a game. They have Gerald Green playing 26.9 minutes a game, although he's weirdly been like an effective heat check guy.
P.J. Tucker's pretty good. Don't sleep on P.J. Tucker.
He's okay. But I'm saying, like, if you give those 30 P.J. Tucker minutes to Thaddeus Young or Paul Millsap, that becomes pretty interesting, right? That's an upgrade.
It does. I mean, Paul Millsap is a 4, so you probably have to play Marcus Morris more at the 3 or rejigger your big man rotation in some way. Thad Young has been mostly a 4, but used to play a 3 when he was younger. It's interesting. It'd be interesting. And Thad Young can't miss right now, so he's a hot name. But he's got 9.5 a year for the next 2 years, I think. After this,
that's a bargain. He's playing for that. He's playing that at that. I would say a tiny bit above that figure.
He is. And we know Phoenix has all those picks, but that they all might be 15th or worse or something like that. So they may not have the killer pick that they thought they were going to have, and can they cash in? And no team actually wants to make 8 draft picks in 3 years or whatever they're slated to make. They're gonna do some things. They're gonna look at a lot of things.
They're one more guy away from being really, really, really interesting. And the pace that they play, I guess in a 7-game series, you'd get used to it. But the Clippers were just unprepared the game I went to. They had no idea the Suns were going to play like that. And Chris Paul experienced it for about 5 minutes and was like, you know what? I'm not in the mood tonight. I don't feel like playing in 6th gear for 48 minutes. I'm going to check out of this one. And Hornacek was really like cracking the whip. It was impressive. Anyway, I think going back to the Cavs getting Deng, I do feel like there were better guys out there. I think Thaddeus Young's playing better. I think Millsap's playing better. And you mentioned earlier, like, Deng is not as good offensively as people seem to think. I do wonder, is he a good example of, like, if you're on a team where you're touching the ball all the time and you play 37 minutes a game and you get to 18 points a game, that doesn't necessarily mean you're a really good offensive player, right?
Well, I think that's the Evan Turner conundrum right now. Is, he's putting up these 25 and 5 nights, and I get these tweets every day like, why aren't you talking about how Evan Turner's averaging 20 a game? I'm like, Evan Turner's fine. He's okay. He's averaging 20 a game because he's the best player on the team, half of which belongs in the D League, that's playing at the fastest pace in the league, so they get the ball a gazillion times a game. Deng, to me, is that I wouldn't put Deng in that category. The Bulls play at such a slow pace, so it's not like he's inflating his numbers that way. And he doesn't, for as much responsibility as he has without Rose, he doesn't take a ton of shots. He distributes the ball. He does a lot of little things. He can fill in all the gaps on offenses, like cutting and coming off screens. I wouldn't characterize his numbers that way. They're up, but they're not up to the degree that you're like, oh my God, he's hogging the ball without Rose.
Yeah, I don't think he's hogging the ball. I was just saying that I think sometimes, and my favorite example of this, I think I used to call it the Sharif Abdur-Rahim All-Stars. Guys who on bad teams or mediocre teams or slightly worse than mediocre teams where they don't really have, they're taking a little bit more of an offensive load than they should. And they're not nearly as good of offensive players as you think they are. Like Sharif for 4 straight years was over 20 points a game. He's playing 40 minutes a game. NBA teams are going to score between 95 and 100 points. And if you're one of the best 3 players and the guy who's shooting between 15 and 19 times a game on a team that has trouble scoring or isn't that good, you're going to get to 16 to 20 points. I think Deng's value is with the defense and the intangibles and how hard he plays and that he's a professional. Those are the ways that I think he's going to help them more. It's amazing to me that he never really totally learned how to shoot threes. Because I thought like that was the one thing that could have made, pushed his career to another level. He's 28. Like, he is who he is at this point. He's just not a 3-point shooter. And I think if he was, then that opens up a whole bunch of things you could have done with him. So if you had to guess, playoffs or no playoffs, what would you pick for the Cavs?
I'll put him in. I'll put him in. I think there are too many questions about the New York teams. I think Charlotte is in danger of falling out of the race if their offense doesn't get any better. I think Chicago will not definitely, but I just feel like the cupboard is so bare there now in terms of guys who can actually do something with the ball on offense. I think enough teams are in serious trouble that the Cavs, I think they'll make it.
You think they're going to make it?
I think they're going to make it.
If you were running the Cavs and you were 11-23, and you have one of the deepest lotteries coming up in the last 30 years, and you're not going to make the playoffs, and you blew that number 1 pick on Anthony Bennett, at least for this year, and maybe forever. Now you have a chance to trade another pick that maybe could have helped you or been a trade asset later or whatever, to get Deng, who makes you better, who knocks you out of this year's lottery, so that you can lose in round 1, would you have done that?
Of course not. And not only that, but you run the real risk that Deng looks at this roster in the offseason and just leaves, in which case you just wasted a first-round pick. And, by the way, that Bynum contract was like gold. And I think that's the issue that a lot of guys around the league have brought up with me today is like, good on Chicago for getting a first-round pick, because teams haven't been trading first-round picks in the last 2 years. The Magic couldn't get one for J.J. Redick. The Suns got one for Gortat, and Deng is better than Gortat, but Cleveland was also offering the Bynum contract. And there's an argument that they could have gotten more than Deng with the Bynum contract and a pick, and that Chicago did well to get a first-rounder for Deng, in addition to a bonanza of cap savings. But no, I wouldn't have done the trade, but I don't work for Dan Gilbert. And Dan Gilbert's people went to the lottery last year when I was there, made a whole bunch of hullabaloo about how this is our last trip to the lottery. We're making the playoffs. We're winning now. Dan Gilbert gets kind of crazy about these things. And I'll bet you dollars to donuts. Has anyone ever said that in the last 5 years, by the way?
No, I loved it.
Donuts? No, 0 people ever said that.
Yeah.
I'll bet you dollars to donuts that some of those sweeteners, those second-round picks, the swap rights they got, I'll bet you that's Dan Gilbert coming in and being like, you guys got to make this deal, make it happen. We got to win. the city is going to catch fire, just doing like Dan Gilbert things.
I'm going to go further. I think Dan Gilbert made the trade. I think he negotiated it, and I think he was the one who did it. And I don't think Chris Grant. Put it this way: if you're Chris Grant, there's no way you want to do that trade, because you're doing that trade so you can try to make the playoffs for reasons that make no sense whatsoever. And then on top of it, it looks so bad if Deng leaves now, which is a little bit like the Iguodala situation in Denver, right? They trade for Iguodala in a contract year. He gets a little taste of all the people on that team. The summer comes, he's like, all right, guys, I'll see you later. I'm going to go to Golden State. And unless they can sign Deng to an extension right now, I think he's out. Now, here's the next question. There were numbers floating around like, they could sign him $50 million for 3 years, something like that. Why the hell would you do that? Why, in a million years, why would you do that? Why would you give Luol Deng $15 million, $16 million a year? I wouldn't do that. Would you?
Nobody is going to do that, or they shouldn't. But the Iguodala thing is also instructive in a way that we need to pump the brakes a little bit, because Denver at least, and this is what Cleveland is thinking, I guarantee you, if Deng walks, at the very least, we can sign and trade him so that we get an asset and a trade exception, like the Nuggets got Randy Foye and a trade exception. They may never use that trade exception, but they at least can get something. But yeah, but the thing about Chris Grant is, you're saying it's counter to his incentives. Maybe it's exactly aligned with his incentives. Maybe the message is you make the playoffs or you're going to lose your job, in which case this is totally in line with his incentives. And that happens all the time in the NBA.
Oh, I think you hit the nail on the head, and it's the exact same situation that Brian Colangelo was in last year, where I might as well do this. I'm going to get fired anyway. Best case scenario, my team takes off and they can't fire me. Worst case scenario, I'm going anyway. I'm not going to be picking in this lottery. So maybe he did make the trade. But I do think, if I'm another NBA team, the teams I'm looking at to try to trade with is a team like Cleveland, a team that's, clearly doesn't know what direction they want to go in anymore. We want to be good. We don't want to wait anymore. Those are the teams you want to trade with. Anytime a team says, we don't want to wait anymore, what are you going to do? Win the title? What are they going to beat Miami and Indiana? You're not going anywhere. You should want to build something for the long haul. And that pick could have helped them. And the other thing is the LeBron shadow still lingers over this whole thing a tiny bit, and I still wonder if Deng is your fallback plan if you can't get LeBron.
I think I'll go even further. I think it's an admission that the chances of LeBron going there are almost nothing. And that, and we've talked about this before. Everyone talks about how great this free agency market is. And I write about this in the Post today. All these guys that are great free agents are either restricted, so you're not going to get them. They already signed Kobe and Paul George, or they're unrestricted. They have player options, so they may enact those. Or they're like LeBron and Wade, where they're unrestricted, but they have no reason to leave their teams who can offer them more years and more money. And you start crossing off the names of all of those guys, and you're like, Luol Deng might be the second or third best free agent that's actually a free agent. And the Bulls just let that guy go. And although I think this is a good trade for Chicago, it does raise the question of they've got to replace that production somehow, with a guy who fits their timetable of, they're not rebuilding. They want to get back to being a contender now, next year. So, and Cleveland, they look at, if we're not getting a LeBron, no one comes here in free agency. This may be our best shot to get a guy who's actually a good free agent. The danger is if they go full hog and offer him a 5-year, $65 million deal, years 4 and 5 have a very good chance of being ugly.
Right. Well, and then here's the other problem. We haven't even talked about this yet. Verjao has a bad habit of getting hurt for long stretches of time, and it hasn't happened yet this season. But the way this team is built, if he goes down and the Bynum thing didn't work out, now all of a sudden they're really small. You make this Deng trade hoping that you get a full season out of Verjao, who has had a habit of just disappearing. You talked about the free agency class, and the Celtics, I think, the Celtics made a sneaky trade over the weekend. They got rid of Courtney Lee's contract. It's now doable for the Celtics to make a run at somebody this summer with a contract starting at, I think, depending on where the cap is, it could be $10 million, $11 million, something like that. I think Gordon Hayward is a target for them. And I don't know if it happens next month before the deadline or it's something where they just plan on making a giant restricted offer and hoping Utah doesn't match or whatever. But I think Gordon Hayward is somebody that they want.
It would surprise me. Hayward is the one restricted guy that I look at it and say, you might be able to get this guy if you really love him. You're confident that his sort of decline statistically this season is just because he's on a horrible team where he has to do too much and he's young.
Yep.
And you throw a huge offer at him. He's the one guy of the restricted free agents you might be able to get. The other guy, and I don't know how this fits with Avery Bradley, and I'm not really talking about the Celtics anymore. I do talk about this with the Bulls today, although I don't think they'll have enough cap room to really do it. There's a team out there that is going to make a home run offer for Lance Stevenson. And Stevenson is unrestricted. He's not restricted. Yep. And I don't know what's going to happen with him. He wants to stay in Indiana. They probably have enough cap room to sort of squeeze him in without going over the tax. But if I were, that's the guy I look at. What is he, like 23? 23-year-old guys that are that good don't ever become unrestricted free agents. Some team is going to make a home run offer for that guy.
Yeah, he doesn't turn 24 until September. He's having an unbelievable season. Certainly a season I never expected. A two-way season that I just, if you told me 2 years ago that it was going to happen, I just would have put the odds at like 200 to 1. Hayward is also young. Hayward turns 24 in March. And as you said, not having a great season, not having a good shooting season. His threes went in the tank this year. He's 31% right now. Last year's 42. But again, he's on a terrible team. It's not a well-coached team. I would say going from Ty Corbin to Brad Stevens would be a slight upgrade, especially the way Stevens knows how to use him. And I think the Celtics could construct an offer and get to, starting at $13 million, they could probably get to like $58 million for 4 years. And that puts Utah in a really interesting spot because where did they didn't even want to pay him, 4 for 45 as an extension? Something like that? Or did he want the max?
I don't think the figures ever came out. I mean, I remember Mark Stein tweeting something that rumors that Hayward's team demanded the same contract that Paul George got or a max contract were not true. But I don't know that the exact numbers ever came out. And this year, at the very least, his value is sort of plateauing. He's not playing himself into, yet at least, not playing himself into a massive deal.
If you're Utah, would you consider trading him?
I mean, I'd consider anything if I were Utah.
Right. But let's say Phoenix said, hey, we have a lot of first-round picks. We like Gordon Hayward a lot. Would you like some of our first-round picks? Then you could be really bad. Now you're guaranteed you were taking your only kind of competent scorer other than Trey Burke off your roster.
But I've already got 2 Golden State first-round picks. Now, maybe those aren't going to end up being very good, but one of them is in 2017, so at least it has the possibility of being very good. I don't know that I might think Utah might think the other way where, I'm just going to hold on to these assets, and including Hayward, and try and see maybe down the line if there's a superstar or a star that becomes available. But it's hard when you're Utah because you can't trade for a superstar that has 1 or 2 years left on his contract because you run the risk of, he's just going to go out of town.
If you were the Celtics, would you say, hey, Utah, that pick we have? It's the worst pick of Brooklyn or Atlanta. We'll give you that pick right now for Gordon Hayward. It might get in the lottery. You can have it right now. Straight up. That would be interesting.
Yeah.
I think if I'm Utah, I'd do that.
If I were the Celtics, I would do that in a second. I think Utah would demand more, and I don't know what the Celtics have that they're interested in, unless they're a Jeff Green team, and I don't know if they are or not.
I'm not sure how many Jeff Green teams are out there at this point. I really like Gordon Hayward, though, and I think him and Lance are the 2 fascinating guys. Melo obviously is interesting, and I think Chicago has to be considered. Any Carmelo conversation, Chicago now has to be brought up because if they amnesty Boozer, they're on the road to having enough cap space to make him a huge offer.
But they're only on the road. They've got
They need a couple
like
more.
10, 11, 12 in space, and they need to get almost 10 more to make Melo a max offer. But Melo's interesting. There's all this buzz now that the Knicks should look at trading Melo. It's like I've been saying that for 6 months. They're irresponsible for waiting this long And I don't even think they are looking to trade Melo, but I think they should have been for a long time. I don't want to be the team on the hook for the 5-year, $130 million Melo contract.
Yeah, it's funny. I floated out because the Blake Melo stuff last week was so stupid, and I don't want to talk about it. But I tweeted about how if you're talking about actual trade destinations, that makes sense in a world that makes sense for Carmelo Anthony. Phoenix is the team that would make sense because they have the Okafor expiring contract. They have all these first-round picks. Like, they could put together a pretty nice package that would allow the Knicks to at least get something for them. And the Phoenix fans, I made the mistake of checking my Twitter replies. The Phoenix fans were furious. They're like, we don't want that guy. It's amazing to me that this is a top 10 player, and most of the fan bases would be upset if their team traded for him, right? It's almost unprecedented.
I have two questions. Number one, is he really a top 10 player?
He probably isn't.
I don't think he is. But I don't think he's far from that. He might be 16 or 15 or 12 or something. But I could name 10 guys I like better than Melo. But I'm not surprised. I mean, Phoenix, they got a good thing going right now. They got a lot of picks. Melo's almost 30. I'm not sure that's the guy that I'm going to war with. Especially, he's got an expiring contract, so you need some degree of long-term certainty that he's going to stay. It's not like if you just plopped him on that team right now, I don't think they're beating Oklahoma City or San Antonio or the Clippers if Chris Paul gets healthy or Golden State. But I could be wrong about that.
LeBron, Durant, Paul George, Chris Paul, Stephen Curry, Dwight Howard, Anthony Davis, LaMarcus Aldridge, Kevin Love, Blake Griffin, Russell Westbrook, James Harden. I'm now at 12 guys I would rather have than Carmelo Anthony.
Anthony Davis might be premature, but he might not be. He might already be that good.
Listen, I will remember you said that when we're having the party on the bandwagon.
I love Anthony Davis. I love Anthony. He just hasn't played that much in the NBA. And I was going to say he's still learning NBA defense, but Carmelo's still learning NBA defense. He's been in the league for 10 years. So,
who would you rather have for the next 10 years, Anthony Davis or Kevin Love?
Anthony Davis.
Who would you rather have for the next 10 years, Anthony Davis or Blake Griffin?
Anthony Davis.
This Anthony Davis is a thing. Because I'm starting to think about the trade value. And there's a good chance I might shoot my wad in a really over-the-top way for Anthony Davis in a way that'll embarrass myself like 5 years from now. Because I watch these games.
I don't think betting on Anthony Davis is going to end up being an embarrassing decision.
Is there anyone more fun to watch in the high screen than Anthony Davis? All I want is New Orleans to run pick and roll with him and Tyreek or Drew Holiday or whoever. I love, because there's always a chance all of a sudden he's going to be a foot and a half over the rim dunking some alley-oop or a follow-up slam he's like the perfect pick and roll guy. I really enjoy watching him.
I think the actual NBA trade value rankings right now, if you polled 100 people who work in the NBA, 1 LeBron, 2 Durant, 3 Davis. I think that's where we are. Considering he's on a rookie contract, he's 20 or 21 or whatever he is. He's already really good, and he has almost no idea what he's actually doing. And you see the potential he has as a defensive force. I think he'd probably rank third.
Yeah, I would say, again, I'm just tinkering with the first list, but I think Paul George has a case for the 3 spot because because Indiana. So like, Indiana's hanging up on anyone who's not offering Durant or LeBron. If it's less than one of those 2 guys, they're like, forget it. Like, we don't want to talk to you. We can win a title right now. Just leave us alone. But anyway, back to your point, Carmelo you're right. He's not a top 12 player anymore. And then it goes, once you go into that second group, you're talking about guys like Hibbert and Tony Parker, Damian Lillard and Kyrie, and that's probably the group he belongs in.
Duncan doesn't even get a mention. Come on, Horford.
Well, Duncan
gets spitballing. I realize
Duncan gets the NMRA. Him and Dirk. By the way, I'm disappointed in you this year. You really backed Larry Sanders and Andre Miller, and it's blown up in your face. Let's be honest. They have the Zach Lowe stink on them now. I'm really worried about Dirk Nowitzki, another Zach Lowe favorite, who is quietly at age 35 having another 50, 40, 90 season. And if you could, I really don't want you to pimp him too much because I don't want him to get the Zach stink on him. I'm worried.
Dirk is beyond those kind of worries. And Professor Miller, by the way, Professor Miller will have his revenge on the Denver Nuggets in this life or the next. Professor Miller will have his say on the matter.
This could be good for us, getting him on a playoff team. One last run for the professor. Could be a win. I just can't figure out what team that would be. It's funny, the Kings keep floating in these rumors, and it's like, whoa, why do the Kings want to get better? Where do they think they're going? Stop it, Sacramento.
They're trying to go to a new arena and be respectable. That's I think what's going on with the Kings.
I don't see it. I'm sorry, Sacramento.
Jimmer as backup point guard is not going to work out in the long haul.
I support the Boogie franchise, but I don't totally see it. Anyway, Zach, did we miss anything with the Deng trade? We covered everything. Right? I guess that we didn't cover the Tibbs part. So what happens with Tibbs? Because it does seem like if you were going to make a bet, which coach is going to be involved in the next Doc Rivers type Clippers trade, I would say Tibbs is a minus 400 favorite.
I don't think there's even another name in the conversation. To me, this is I don't know what went on there. There's obvious hard feelings. The Ron Adams thing, Ron Adams finally discussed it on the record with Casey Johnson of the Chicago Tribune a couple of days ago, and he said that it hurt him and his family, whatever happened between him and the Bulls. That was obviously an ugly thing. The Deng thing was ugly. Tibbs' reaction today was sort of feisty. Noah declines comment. It's a sore team right now. But if you took Tom Thibodeau and said, look, all you care about is winning. Okay, we have Derrick Rose. We think he's going to be healthy. We have Noah. We have Jimmy Butler, who's a young, very good player. We have all these draft picks. Mirotic is coming over. I know you're obsessive. I know we're looking at the next game and the next game after that. Take a trip with me to 6 months from now when we're going to still have a big market team and a very good NBA situation that may persist for another 2 or 3 or 4 years after that. I just feel like Tibbs, you got to be able to see the big picture because it's not that hard to see.
Yeah, it really seems like that's a messed up franchise because the medical stuff that happened with Deng was really effed up. Really effed up. And I can't remember a situation with a player being misdiagnosed that badly and then the team not really seeming like they felt as bad as they should have felt about it, and then they're kind of not negotiating a contract extension with them, and the whole thing was just crazy. Derrick Rose, that whole thing, kind of leaving the door open a couple times and maybe it didn't seem like they were totally on the same page with that. And then and the way they handled the Ron Adams thing and Thibodeau, and it seems like a highly dysfunctional franchise.
I don't even think you mentioned the Vinny Del Negro, John Paxson.
Oh, forgot about that.
Shubbo Rama.
Yeah. If I'm a free agent, I just look at everything that goes on with that franchise. I'm like, I don't know if I guess money talks.
That's a fair point. I think those guys are all smart, and competitive, and I think it's a healthy place. Everyone I know there is smart and level-headed, or at least seems as such. But they've had some interesting stuff happen to them in the last couple of years. But I think, ultimately it's an enticing market. I think it's a healthy franchise.
So they got $32 million for Derrick Rose and Noah alone next year. Gibson's 8, so now we're up to 40. Then Dunleavy, Snell, Butler, and Teague. It's another 8.
I had them at 49.
Yeah, it's 48, 49.
Giving them the number 10 pick in the draft. And that's before Mirotic, who they can bring over now outside the rookie scale. So I don't know what he'll end up making. But
so, if they were fired up for Carmelo and they thought they really had a chance to get him, they could package the Charlotte pick they own with Taj Gibson to a team like Philly that had salary cap space. And that would be the way to get to that, where they needed to go to offer Carmelo enough money. If they want to do that, they might not be interested in him. And there's a lot of people that aren't as interested in Carmelo Anthony as I think the general public.
That's a team where I think he could work because you have a guy, who's going to dominate the ball. It's Rose if he's healthy. And you'd put Carmelo back in that role where he is in the Olympics when he's so good, where he's a catch-and-shoot guy, catch-and-drive guy. You have defensive guys around him to protect him. Look, we're seeing with Golden State now, they have the third or fourth best defense in the league with Steph Curry and David Lee playing huge minutes because they have good defenders at all the other positions. that's a team where it could work. And actually, the Bulls, you asked me if we didn't cover any other angles. The Bulls are interesting because this is their last summer. Now that they have this 10, 12, whatever it ends up being in cap space, this is the last summer before Jimmy Butler's deal, his next deal, kicks in. So this is their last summer where they're slated to have meaningful cap room for a while. And that raises a lot of questions. How do you use it? What if you don't sign a free agent with it? How else can you use it? And then the next big thing is 2 years from now, a year from now, do you view Joakim Noah as a long-term piece of the franchise? And if you don't, what can that get you? And I think it's way too early to have that conversation, but he's sort of the next domino. And all of this, by the way, assumes that they're going to amnesty Boozer, which they will.
Right. So as my boy Alvin from NBA Countdown tweeted last night, there is a world where next year the Bulls could go into the season with Derrick Rose, Jimmy Butler, Carmelo Anthony, Mirotic, and Joakim Noah as their starting five, along with a lottery pick coming off the bench. It could be pretty interesting.
Impossible.
It's possible. All right, Zach Lowe. Just have some solo time. Go to the movies or something. Go see one of the Oscar movies.
I want to see. There's so many movies I haven't seen. They're supposedly good. I still haven't seen Gravity.
Oh wow, that's a mistake. You have to address that. You need to address that.
I might have to do a solo viewing on Gravity. All my friends have already seen it.
And then we should also mention that we came to terms. You're going to be one of my assistant coaches for the Celebrity All-Star Game.
Oh, but now you're mentioning it, you're making it official.
Oh yeah, it's me and Jalen are the two coaches. And
I think I told you this. Yeah. You better believe if we get the Property Brothers, we're going to have some locker room confrontations. I may play them at power forward and center. I may ask them to be our water boys. Those guys have subjected me to a lot of life-driven television that was against my will. And maybe we should, if they're going to play again, maybe they should be on Jalen's team.
I just don't want this to be like a Ron Adams type situation where the NBA fires you as my assistant and then it gets really tense during the entire Celebrity All-Star Game. Hopefully that won't happen.
I think we can probably make it work.
All right, fun trade. Deng to the Cavs. Let's see how this works out. Zach Lowe, check out his column today. He did the Luke Walton All-Stars. One of my favorites. I'm glad you were able to devote some time to what the hell is going on with Chris Middleton, because that was one of the weird league pass subplots this year has been the rise of Chris Middleton.
Chris Middleton took 20 shots again tonight. Yeah. What is going on in Milwaukee?
Unbelievable. Milwaukee, we might have to send you down there for a few days to kind of get a feel for whatever is happening there. All right, and we will check out your other piece today that went up about Deng and the trade. Zach Lowe, thank you.
Target to sign off. Whoa.
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Podcenter at ESPNradio.com.
Peace out.
Gotta say, Golic, great call on grabbing Subway for lunch and getting guacamole on our subs.
Told you this new guac really amps up the flavor.
Yep, something adding up things can be great. Guacamole on your sub, a new co-host to replace you.
What was that?
Oh, no, nothing.
Subway now has deliciously rich new guacamole made from ripe Hass avocados with just a hint of garlic, onion, and jalapeno. Discover how new guacamole turns up the flavor on any of your freshly made favorites. Subway, eat fresh.